Hi, Kimberly. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to spending time with you. I always enjoy our interaction.
Yes, it's wonderful. I think that's one of the best things about being in this business is all of the amazing, not just caregivers, but the fellow advocates and peers that I get to meet. It's a great group.
It's a
Mindset of abundance for
supportive group.
sure.
Yeah,
It's so important, I think, because that way we can better serve and combine our resources and better serve 53 million just in the US. There's a lot of people that need our help.
that's right.
Well, we like to kick off the things on a positive note. So I have this jar that I created initially as a gift for my sister, but the downloads are available so folks can create their own container of inspiration, motivation. And there's even a refill pack because when I used to go visit my sister, I would refill her jar with other stuff when she was the primary caregiver for mom. So, your words of wisdom today say, okay, this is a quote from one of my favorite authors, Amy Tan, and it says, if you can't change your fate, change your attitude.
Mm.
What are your thoughts
Well,
on that?
let's think about family caregivers, right? Like caregiving lands in your lap a lot of times, right? Like and there's so many components of caregiving that are completely out of your control. And I mean, I experienced that and I exactly had to figure out how to manage my emotions and my expectations instead of trying to control the situation that was completely uncontrollable, right?
It's so true. I heard Denise Brown say this one time. She's who I got my certified caregiving consultant training
Mhm.
through. And she said that caregiving is really a lesson in learning how to let go. And that is so
Mm.
true. I know I wanted to have the reins so tight and just kind of conduct and orchestrate. And it is so not that. And
It's
anyone listening.
interesting actually. I use a planner for like all my every single day to make sure and like you can put in what your affirmation is. So today it's let it be, right?
Ooh.
Because I feel like every day I just run out of time. Like every single day I run out of time with like, oh, I didn't get as much done as I wanted to. And I need to just instead of trying to control every hour of my day, just be like, just let it be the way it's going to be today
I
and
love
know
that
that you're going to do good stuff, you know?
I know this is my planner. I just got one of these ones from Natural Life. I love
Those
their
are really great.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
get another one. I love it. But same thing, Kimberly. It's like
Mhm.
I never get it all done. Like
No.
I tell people not to put a lot on their list. Like one of my things I coach is like, well, I'll post it and do three things, but I always overload, and then kind of disappointed in what you can get done. But we'll never be bored as entrepreneurs in this space because there's always great ideas, and I think that
Sure.
means that we just like what we do,
Yeah.
and we want to help people. And I get it. So I'm right there with you on a planner. I love the affirmation though. So that's
Yeah.
a great thing to write out. Well, we like also after we like to just kind of ground people in who you are. I know who you are, Kimberly, but other people who have no clue who Kimberly Whiter is, tell us a little bit about your personal family caregiving story as much as you're comfortable. And
Yeah, sure. So it ties into the work that I'm doing now in that I spent 11 years cultivating this career in higher education and had this vision for uh, really retiring as like a professor and an administrator in higher ed. Like I was comfortable and very content. Um, and at the end of 2019, I had met the co-founders of Elder Care Solutions, and they had extended an offer for me to join the team as the CEO. Right.
oh,
And
nice.
I had been learning from them through a consultative relationship, like these incredibly difficult and hard situations that caregivers get in. And in return, I was sharing some of my expertise. And so when this invitation came, I was like, oh, that's a terrifying thing to leave a place where I'm really comfortable. And then January 1st, 2020, at 6:30 a.m., I entered into a personal caregiving story.
Mm,
Um, and so during that experience, I was the primary person who was doing all the transportation to doctor's offices, the specialist appointment. It was a very scary health situation. There was a lot of emotions involved. I was managing those emotions for the person that I was caring for, as well as my children who were involved. So I was just kind of pushing that aside, like I was being the logistics person. This also was a caregiving experience where like I held the health story. So it was really up to me to make sure that the big picture was coming together, and I knew what all the doctors were saying and what were all of our directions that we were going to go, and make sure everyone understood the paths,
Oh,
because
geez. You were
the
the
person
glue.
yeah, the person I was caring for, this was terrifying and very emotional for them, and it was too much for them,
Mm.
so I kind of took that on. Um, and at the same time, I'm like considering this massive professional move. And I accepted it because I saw how hard it was. And I was like, if I can be a part of these solutions, whatever that little small piece might be, then I definitely want to be there. And I kind of felt like life was saying, like, hey, you have a new journey you're about to go on.
Yeah.
So I
Forget
accept
that thing you thought you were doing. Whoop.
your
Yeah.
comfort is out of here. And so I took it. So I'm trying to start this new profession as a business runner, and caregiving at the same time. And so my experiences are not the same as every family caregiver. I work with family caregivers every day that bring up experiences that, blow my mind, these situations that they're in. But I have some lived experience that I can pull from, as well as all the stories that I hold in my heart from the caregivers that we work with day and day,
Yeah.
day in, day out. But um, yeah, it's just a very overwhelming and stressful. And I've had to be very honest with myself. Even now in 2022, I'm still getting over some of the emotional, like, cuts and bruises that caused. I've had to talk through it a lot more, just to kind of really continue to process how tough that situation was. And it went on through the year of 2020, which of course had all these other horrible things that went along with it. And so that was just like I feel like I took a beating that year.
Yeah, you had a
Yeah.
real test on to see how resilient you could be because what
Yeah.
you're learning something completely new in your job, which I know for me as a working caregiver, I sometimes felt like, oh, I know how to do this. This is kind of my comfort, and in a sick way, some respite from caregiving. Even though it was work, it was something that I could kind of control and figure out and navigate. So you have a new job, a new caregiving experience, and on top of that, the pandemic. It's a lot
Yeah.
on one person. And finding ways to process that whole experience. I mean, it's been, over 7 years since I started Happy Healthy Caregiver, which it'll be 8 years in August that my dad passed away. And I mean, there's still, like you said, bruises from that. I think that just means that we're human and
Hmm.
we loved big, big time. What kind of advice would you give to folks who are juggling work and caregiving like you were doing?
Yeah, be realistic with yourself. I'm a very, if you can't tell by the planner I use every day, like, to-do list person, check things off. And so when I was, how do I say this? I was giving myself the messaging that I was in a constant mode of failure. I was constantly failing every day. I couldn't check my list off because
Mm,
spontaneous things were popping up. There were emergency situations that were coming up pretty frequently. Um, I would just get a phone call, and the person would just want to talk through their horrifying emotions that they were having, and I had to create space for that, and it was very, very important, like, kind of brings you down to those, what are those primal things that really are important, and of course, that's, like, number 1, that you're there to support somebody when they're going through a horrible thing. And so I if I was doing really good in one thing, I wasn't doing good in the other. So on a day
mm.
that I was a fantastic caregiver, I wasn't the best mom, and I was not doing so great at running the business that day. And on a day that I was like killing it as a CEO, I probably didn't give my kids that much attention, and it probably meant that nothing on the caregiving side had exploded in my face, and on a day when I felt like, oh my gosh, I was an awesome mom and we homeschooled really well today because they were home with the pandemic. I didn't have any meetings and caregiving was fine, so you really just got to be realistic and say, my day probably is going to look like I'm really good at one thing and the other things just need to be the way they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love how you phrased all of that. I always used to think of like a little table with three legs, and it was just like my table was so wobbly, particularly in the
Yeah.
sandwich generation, working and
Mhm.
caring for my kids and aging parents, and I didn't have the pandemic homeschool thing to navigate through at that time. But yes, you're always off kilter, and something always has to give. And I think we say about balancing work and caregiving, and I don't know if that's even realistic. Balancing, like it's more like, for me, I found I had to kind of integrate it together, and that compartmentalize my days and try to kind of get little sections where I could focus on work and then maybe focus on this. And it's hard. It's hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. And for women, which the predominance of family caregivers are, right? Women, the value we place on ourselves, because the messaging to us is the value that other people place on us, is how well we show up for other people, which
Mm.
is horrible. It's not what we bring to the table in our intellect most of the time. It's, well, are you a good mom, or did you show up and support your husband, or whatever those important people in your life are. And so it is so easy for us to tell ourselves that we are failing when we're not being great in those areas of our life. And when you're a caregiver in the sandwich generation who has care on parents and your kids, and you're probably a partner or a spouse, you're required to show up in so many ways that you're just constantly being pulled from. And I had to get to this space where I was like, I helped my kids with homeschool this morning. I took somebody to the doctor this afternoon. Now I'm going to work, and it's okay if the kids eat Pop Tarts for dinner. Like, you have to just let life look the way it looks and get to a space where you're not like beating yourself up, like, "Ugh, I didn't even cook dinner and wash the dishes." And it gets really hard. And so, like, that realism helps out a lot.
Yeah, I think, and that's
Mhm.
where social media can be tough too, because we're seeing
Sure.
other people's, front windows of what they want us to see. And there is so much self-talk and giving ourselves grace. I like to say to the clients I coach, and the guilt is just a natural
Yeah.
emotion that's going to
Yeah.
come up, but replace it with another G word and give yourself some grace, because it's tough. You're being really, put through the ringer and tested. And if you can look in the mirror every night and say, gosh darn it, I gave it my all today, like that's got to be good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so, thank you for sharing all of that. I think it's so important that we talk about it, because
Oh, yeah.
that's what we do as caregivers, and we want to make sure that we're validated and that other people are feeling like we have felt.
Yeah.
Um, it's so important. What are some, I know when I started Happy Healthy Caregiver back in 2015, I just felt like there were no resources for family caregivers. That was
Sure.
always the
Yeah.
thing that frustrated me, is like,
Yeah.
hello, does anybody see like how I'm
This
like
is a life
crumbling?
stage and it's not supported at all. Yeah.
Yes. And so now there's definitely more. Um, what are your thoughts on that? And
Yeah.
how do you guide people in what you do?
So, from a family caregiver side, I think it's amazing. From a business side, I think a lot of us tend to get into like, oh, there's a lot of people out here. The market is getting saturated, but there's room for all of us, right? Because there are there's resources where, like, if a caregiver, the way that they feel like they're going to get helped the most is to take a more independent stance and like just put in their questions, do their own research, come up with their own answers from like these amazing content creators, then that's fantastic because some people like that independence. Or if you're like, I just need somebody to hold my hand through this whole journey and I can ask all the questions and they can like help guide me to the answers, there's people out there like you, that can do that. Um, Or if you want like very specific resources that help with little fine things, like I just need some legal help, or I need some financial help, or I
Yeah.
need care, then go find those. But the one thing that I would tell family caregivers now is stop thinking there's nothing out there, because that's not our reality anymore. It was like 6 years ago, but it's
Hmm.
not now. And so think about the way that you like to receive help and the way that you feel comfortable getting that, and go look for it because it exists. Right.
Yeah, I mean, search on the topic, and I think there's a lot out there, but
Mhm.
whatever is your that you need just today,
Yeah.
go and do
Yeah.
a little search. What it is. It's like you said, if it's financial help or elder care, or you're got questions about a medication, like whatever it is, there is somebody to help you navigate that.
Mhm.
And so it's one of the reasons why we always advocate too is getting involved with a support group, because people maybe don't have the time to look on the internet and figure it
Right.
all out. And
Right.
the best resources come from other family caregivers who have
Mhm.
lived it and have worked with these individuals and can really share testimonies about what's working. Um, you talk a little bit about what you do specifically
Sure.
to help family caregivers and some of the things that you have coming up later this year.
Yeah, sure. So, the business that I run and now own, late last year, I became the owner of Elder Care Solutions, and we our little sliver of the care economy, I say, is the financial strain that family caregivers face when they are caring for an elderly loved one. So many family caregivers are just blindsided with how little the supports that they think are in place to cover senior care cover. So Medicare only covers high levels of care, usually skilled nursing level care, or very short-term things like mom broke her hip and she could get the surgery covered and 100 days of rehab and then no more,
Right.
um,
That's
and
huge. I just want people to
right,
digest that. Like Medicare does not pay for long-term care.
yeah. So what I always say, there's a perfect storm brewing. One, we have this gigantic generation that are becoming our senior citizens right now. They're the biggest generation we've ever seen. They also are the first generation to go through modern healthcare their entire lives, which means they're aging very differently than every generation before them.
Hmm.
And the national average is 19 years longer than their counterparts in the generation right before them. So in one generation, we gained 2 decades of life, right? That's huge. And the way they age, so those 2 decades of life, this much longer late chapter of life, tends to have chronic conditions, which aren't skilled nursing level care conditions. They're more of your long term care
Hmm.
level of care, and
And
that
multiple of them.
yeah,
Yes.
multiple chronic conditions where they need help, but it's like low to moderate levels of care. That is hugely uncovered by our governmental systems that we think are there to cover things.
Oh, I've lived
So,
that for
yeah,
sure. Yes.
most families are just spending tons of money out of pocket, private paying for all these levels of care that just have no money points, right? So we come in and guide families to a more financially positive experience in their caregiving experiences as well as their aging experiences, because we'll hit both when we help the caregiver. Um, and so as we're working through that, we will help them navigate care so that it's as cheap as possible. We help them navigate getting more money into their situations, so tapping into benefits that they might be eligible for, leveraging assets in smart ways, and tapping into community resources like nonprofit groups or the government agencies that are funded and exist to have services for them, but they just usually don't even know they're there, right? So they're not even accessing their programming. Um, so in lieu of all
I
of
love
that,
all that. I feel like from where I sit today, Kimberly, I feel like there seems to be, a lot more financial resources for veterans,
yeah.
veteran caregivers after 9/11 in
Mhm.
particular, and then for dementia, Alzheimer's caregivers. But there's all these other caregivers. Like, what are a couple of things that people might not know about that could be available for them?
Yeah, so maybe some of the easier things that you can think about maybe without even any guidance, right? A lot of people end up in their late years having like multiple insurance products, right? So like over the course of your life, you've been like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll take on life insurance and I'll take on that supplemental plan and I've done it, right?
We're
And
in
then
those discussions now, my husband and I.
yeah,
Yes.
and so then
Yes.
you sit back and look at them and like then you start accessing Medicare at 65 and you can sit back and say, "Oh, there's a lot of redundancies here. There's a lot of multiple plans and I'm paying out multiple, sometimes not very big premiums, but just like a lot of them. And there's actually like three plans that you have that cover the same thing. So when you can sit down and look through all of the insurance products that you are now paying for and start looking at those redundancies and start fine tuning them. You can maybe call a company and say, is there a different plan that keeps this but gets rid of this? And there are always. And we've saved families up to $4,000 a year just by like shaking out all of the insurance products that they have in place.
That's good. That's good. That's real. That's more than you're giving up your Starbucks,
That
type
is,
of thing.
yeah.
Yes. I
I
love
mean,
that. And so I think that that's, you're kind of looking at the holistic picture and
mhm,
like you said,
yeah.
trying to make it a financially positive experience. And the answer isn't always, I'm assuming, whittle down all of your assets and try to get on Medicaid.
Right. Well, and our biggest thing with that is one, don't think about it so quickly as like, I guess this is what I need to do because it's terrifying. It's going to stress you out in a big way. It's not a fast process either. So don't
No.
think that you're just gonna, like let's go through it and be like, give me the Medicaid. And if you have any desire, like most families, to leave a legacy, it it might take that away, right? But keep it in the back of your mind as something that may be a thing that we pull the trigger on in the future. So our best advice is from the get-go, start planning for it and figure out the exact month in what year will you be like, you know what, at this point, I would think Medicaid's going to make good sense.
Well,
And so,
it requires planning. I mean, because
yeah,
they have a 5-year look back, right?
exactly.
In
And
that
so, like,
program.
all the financial decisions that we're making could be under the microscope later, right? Whenever you decide you want to do it. And at some point, it might make great sense. So don't do anything to make that trigger moment a one where you're going to get denied because you weren't thinking about it. And start doing some stuff to protect some assets and then look at what's left and then say, okay, so this could last us 2.5 years. So, in June of 2024, that's our Medicaid moment. That's going to make a lot of sense for us, right?
Yeah.
And then with that planning, you start to like feel much more empowered and you lose a lot of that stress thinking about like, oh, what are we going to do when the money runs out? Or so it's this planning aspect around it instead of it being like a reactionary thing, which
So
it is for a
important.
lot of people.
It's a
Yeah.
heavy load for
Yeah.
many, many people.
Of
I'm
course.
grateful that my dad was on top of his stuff and
Hmm.
we were in a private pay situation. We paid lots of money,
So
for
much money.
mom's care in particular because she had, 6 bonus years after my dad had
Yeah.
passed and we thought she would pass before dad and
Hmm.
such a hard thing to watch their nest
Yeah.
egg kind of whittle away and try to help be good financial stewards of that. Took a lot of planning, but I'm grateful, so grateful that we had there's many, many caregivers out there that do not have that type of situation.
Sure.
And it's nice to know that there are options and that there are people to come to like yourself where you're just going to be a objective look. You're not a family member, you don't have any
Hmm.
inheritance in this game. There's nothing specifically. I imagine you charge for your service.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say this is one area where there's so much that can be gained from family caregivers being in support groups, like both you and I run those. Um, but this area, the financial area, you're not going to glean a lot by talking to your friends because all of the financial situations are so incredibly unique to your specific
Yeah, and
family. So
personal, very
they're very
personal.
personal. And so this is one of those, like, you really just need some good guidance.
Mm.
And the guidance should be as bird's eye as it can be. So I always there's not a lot of people out there hitting this on the nose the way we are, because it's really hard and it's scary, and a lot of people are just like, not it, like we don't want to talk about that part because it's really hard. Um, but don't think of those one professional. So like, I'll go talk to a financial planner about this. That can be a great idea, but it also is going to narrow you down to just the things that they know about. So
Mhm.
who are the people who can tell you, like, what could 5 different professionals tell you about this? Because you want your, like, high up view of all the different options you have. And that's what we provide. That's that kind of like, let's get up at 10,000 feet and show you all your options, and then you can pick your directions, right?
Yeah, because you do kind of feel like when like you're in a corner. Like I brought up that my husband and I are having this discussion about do we have enough life insurance, and do we
Mhm.
have, do we want to get long-term care insurance, which we probably should have done that before age 50, as we've noticed that that has
Yeah.
definitely gone up. But I wish there, and maybe it's you, like this objective person, to say, hey, in y'all's situation, this is kind of what I would recommend that you have, because I made a big financial decision last year of
Mhm.
quitting my day job
Mhm.
to do Happy Healthy Caregiver full time. Well, I gave myself a huge pay cut when I that happened,
Yeah,
and
sure.
and so it's changed things. So if something were to happen with to my husband, I would need to not necessarily live the same lifestyle that I'm living. I'm willing to make some sacrifices, but it's all of these conversations that kind of need to happen. And what is the right answer? How many thousands of dollars do we need to have on life insurance, or do we want something with a living benefit, which I
Mhm.
learned, like, all these things. And it's like, I'm not an expert, but I do feel like if I were to go to an insurance person, like you said, they're going to sell me
Yeah,
whatever it is that they know. And I'm like, is that really the best thing? I don't know.
sure. That's it's one of our core philosophies in our empowerment. It's not just the empowerment of the knowledge, but it's the empowerment of, like, you're still going to have conversations with these professionals, right? So instead of what it looks like for most people, and they're like, hi, financial planner, I need help. I'm not sure what it is, but can you help me? I'm in this situation.
And they're like
You're
dollar signs. Yeah.
Exactly. You're in this vulnerable situation where they will give you really great advice, but it is very specific to what they do. And it's going to come at you from a salesy, let me tell you about the products that I have in place that we can help you with. When we would rather a family caregiver go sit down and say, okay, I know about these 4 strategies. I'm very interested in them. Tell me about them.
Because
And
they've
then
learned it from you potentially.
they're in a much more powerful place, and they're not being sold to. They're looking for information, and they're deciding which one is the best fit for them, right? And it's different.
Yeah.
So we want to, like, flip that narrative so people have more control, because you're in this very heavy situation where a lot of the control is not there for you. So let's give you the control in these spaces.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is very empowering. I feel empowered just talking to you. Then you're in a seat where you can drive and say and shop
Exactly.
around and
Exactly.
say, this is what I'm looking for. What is your quote on that? That
Yeah.
would be amazing to feel that. Okay, let's talk about the event that you have coming up.
Sure. Yeah. So as I was networking with a lot of people, when I took on the role as CEO, the caregiving stuff calmed down, and I'm meeting with people. And, like, you were one of them, right? Like, I'm just like, who's in this sandbox? Where do they sit? What do they do? And then I was consistently getting from them, like, I'd hear somebody doing something similar, and I was like, "Oh, do you know so and so?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "This is a big field where a lot of people don't know about each other." And from higher ed, it was just super, like, not a big leap for me to say, like, let's build a conference around it. And so that's what I did. There's actually a friend of ours. We share, Robin Weeks, also a
Yeah.
caregiver consultant. I was at her house, which looks like a beautiful postcard of the Blue Ridge Mountains, because we're only about an hour from each other. And I was like, I have this idea. What if we had a national conference where we get all the leaders together? And she's like, well, what would that look like? And so we just start, like, brainstorming it, and that's where it was born. And it was about 18 months ago, really. So
Do you have any
like,
regrets? Because that's a big That's a big endeavor. Like I
It's a
watched
big
kind of
endeavor.
Denise try
Yeah.
to, you did it for years with the National Caregiving Conference, and it's a big, it's a
Yeah.
big thing.
No, it is for sure. Not my first rodeo with
Okay,
conferencing,
good.
but
Whew.
for it to be where like I'm in the captain of the ship,
Yeah.
and it be at a national level and not like state level or something. But it's also like it's going so well. I'm hoping it's not giving me a false sense of security with it, but it's called the Care Colloquium.
Uh-huh.
I called it that purposely because colloquium is more of like a meeting of the minds, and people get together and they're providing thought leadership on big key things, which is exactly what I want this to be.
There's your
Not
educational
right.
stuff coming in. Yes.
Not passive at all. I don't want sessions where people are speaking and everyone's just sitting there listening. So it won't look like that at all. All of the sessions are very active. They're panel discussions. They're think tanks. We are being really, really creative with this and as innovative as we can while we have time. I'm going to shut down the creative doors in another month or
Yeah.
so. But that audience is all of us who have founded, co-founded, we're running, we own, we have businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, and then also the people who are in advocacy, because they are leaders in like trying to drive some of these important legislative agendas for family caregivers. So all of these leaders will come together and we'll learn about each other so we can all know like who's where and doing what, build collaborations with each other. So we have a huge goal that everyone walks away with a collaboration in place. And so um, that will be, we have collaboration stations sprinkled throughout the
I
whole
love
event,
that.
which are one table, two chairs, and they're like spurring this sit down with one person and dive deep into what you each do and figure out a way to work together, right? Our badges will have not just our name and where we're from and our business, but how we can collaborate with each other. So like I can write, I can speak, and people can approach me like, I'm looking for a writer, you know? So like that kind of, that'll help.
Those are great icebreakers. That's so good.
Yeah. And
Where
then
where is it happening and when?
Roanoke, Virginia,
Okay.
November 14 through 16 this year. And it's going to be
Right in National
really,
Family Caregivers
it's
Month.
during National Family Caregivers Month. Liz O'Donnell with Working Daughter is going to come, and her Working Daughter Day is on Tuesday. So we're going to do like a mass launch of it all together since we'll be in the same space for a lot of people in the economy. So, and our keynote is Amy Goyer. Um,
Great. Well, both of
so,
those folks have been on the podcast of
mhm.
Happy Healthy Caregiver. So
Yeah,
I can link to both of Liz and Amy Goyer's show so people can kind of get a little
that's
taste
awesome.
of what
Yeah,
they're
because
in for.
they both have fantastic voices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Such a great thing. Well, how can people get involved? Do you have all of the speakers lined up already, or more at the point where you're doing registration? How
Yeah,
who
folks.
would be
So
the ideal audience for to attend?
yeah, if you are a leader in the care economy, so you're running a business, you're running a nonprofit, you're doing advocacy work, and you are interested in a speaking opportunity, we are collecting a few more speakers. We have almost our whole roster full, but we do have some more spots. So please connect with me and we can find a great spot. Also, we're building our registration. So we are looking for people who just want to come and have a great time, which is going to be a really great time. The registration for everyone, since everyone will be leaders, will include a free booth to showcase your work. So usually you have to pay for that extra where you go, but this is like comes with it because we want people to know about what you're doing.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and all your food is covered for everyone. We don't want anyone putting their hands in their pockets while they're here. So all the food, all the cocktails, all your coffee, the snacks throughout the whole day, everything is on us. So we're
So
trying to make
nice.
it just a very enjoyable, fun, innovative space where you'll get to experience things that hopefully you don't get to experience in other places.
That sounds amazing. Applause to you and Robin for figuring that out. Robin is also a daughterhood leader, I believe.
Yeah, we actually co-lead a group because we're geographically close to each other. So
So you're
we
a daughterhood circle leader
I'm a
too.
daughterhood circle leader.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Same. We have our meeting tomorrow night
right.
in the Atlanta area. So, and yours is in the Roanoke area.
We do the New River Roanoke Valley. Um,
Gotcha. Well, we'll definitely link to y'all's circle in the show
oh,
notes,
thank
and I'll
you.
also link to the care colloquium. That's a
Thank
hard word
you.
to say, but
You won't forget it
no, you
though.
won't forget it. But we'll link to that so that people can get more information,
That's
as
awesome.
well
Thank
as
you.
your website and everything. So, what a fun way to celebrate National Family Caregivers Month. Um, all right, let's switch gears and talk about. We've talked about financial self-care, so I feel like we're not
Hmm.
completely switching gears because
Sure.
that is such an important topic and one that, does bring peace of mind. I feel like anything is self-care. My definition is anything self-care if it's energizing you or bringing you peace of mind.
Sure.
What's your definition of self-care?
Yeah, sure. Like, and finances for me is in like the top three things that like what will keep me up at night if it's not going well, right? Like
Absolutely.
you just lay there and you're like, what can
There's
I
no
do to fix it?
peace.
What can I, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, yeah, I would say self-care is, yeah, I think anything that can bring you some relaxation or peace, maybe.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So what does your self-care look like for you now?
Yeah. Um, so again, I really focus on realism when it comes to self-care. Um, I I think it's really difficult when we see messaging for family caregivers of self-care that maybe aren't thoughtful for what caregiving actually looks like.
Give
So
an example of that.
yeah, I don't like when I see platforms that really push traditional models of self-care. So they're asking caregivers to take significant times to like meditate or take a lot of time for themselves. And respite is absolutely needed, but respite in ways that like maybe is unrealistic for what caregiving looks like for them. And then it spurs on feelings of guilt for the family caregiver that they're not even able to care for themselves because they're not meeting this like level of self-care of this messaging that's being pushed out to them, when self-care can be so many things and it can be stuff that can be very integrated into the realism of their life, right? So one of mine, because I'm a scheduler and I like to check off my boxes and I write on graph paper and I'm that kind of person, um, me not getting through my schedule as it was laid out was bothering me in a huge way, like causing me significant emotional issues.
Mm.
So my technique for getting through that is I started writing my schedule in pencil. Super simple, but it was a message to myself that this is my plan for today. But if I have to erase parts of it because an emergency falls on my lap or I get a call that a specialty appointment popped up, it's okay. It's okay. This has not been written in stone.
Yeah.
Um, and
And you're
just
the worst critic
oh
on
sure.
all of that. I'm so glad. I also write in pencil on my agenda, and I do a lot of eraser. In fact, I invested in one of those um, eraser solo pens. It's like a really
Oh
good eraser because
sure.
another
Yeah.
thing that annoys me is a messy erased piece of paper.
Oh, I agree. My planner is actually a Rocketbook, which is you use the friction pens. So
Mm.
this is an eraser. It's a pen because I like pens, but you erase it very easily. And so that I've kind of
You
kept
said
that
it's a
on.
rocket. I'm gonna see if I can find it. A rocket planner.
Rocketbook. They
Okay.
have notebooks. They have it's a combo between Rocketbook and Panda Planner. So it's a Panda Planner,
Hmm.
but in a Rocketbook form.
Okay.
And the two main features with Rocketbook is the pages are reusable because you can erase them because you use the Pilot friction pens on
Pilot
them.
friction pen. Are they
Hmm.
also sold by the same company?
No,
Okay.
friction pens are sold by the Pilot Pen Company, and Rocketbook is its own.
Okay. We're
Yeah.
gonna link to all of that because
Oh, they're pretty
I'm
great.
I'm particular about my pens, all of this stuff. Like
Yeah,
I love,
same.
to make
And I'm
sure.
a very fine point pen, like I'm OCD about it. And so they do come in I write in the 0.38 fine
Look at
point, and
you.
it has to be that or I won't use it.
0.38 pilot friction. I'm gonna have to test this pen out, Kimberly, and
It's
I'll be like,
actually, and honestly, it's good. I wouldn't write with it if it was like jumpy or didn't leave a smooth. The other thing with the Rocket books is once you've written on a page, you can, using an app on your phone, scan it and it will go straight to like whatever you attach it to. So for me, it's my Google Drive. So if I just
Mm.
want to write out some notes, I can scan it and send it to Google Drive, and it'll send it to there as a PDF, as well as it'll transcribe into a Word document, and I can just like copy and paste, because I'm still a pen to paper when I'm like brainstorming.
Yeah, I
Okay.
love pen and paper. I've tried other digital tools and I just find that I it doesn't work for my process. I like to
Sure.
highlight, I like to draw, I like to arrow
Yeah.
and
So you
erase.
could get, like, if you want that to just like be stored digitally for you, but as a picture, you have that. Or if you just write out a whole bunch of notes and then it's in Word, and then you can just copy and paste and integrate into like an article that you're writing or whatever.
Yeah.
Which makes it kind of great. But yeah,
It's so important to find our systems of
yeah.
things that work. But
Oh,
I
for
love
sure.
that your whole tip started with writing in pencil and having some more fluidity and flow to your
Yeah,
day. Because as caregivers, like it is like something's bound to happen, and there's always your days don't quite go always as you think. So that's a great tip.
sure.
Well, let's dive into the lightning round, and I'm going to
Okay.
ask you some questions. And there's no wrong answers here, Kimberly. They're all right answers. So but these are all prompts from the Just For You Daily Self Care Journal that I wrote with
Mhm.
caregivers in mind. So, are you a reader, first of all?
Yes.
Okay. Fiction or nonfiction?
Mostly nonfiction.
Okay, let's go with this one. That was my question I had picked out. What's the best or one of the best, let's say, because that's hard to figure out the best, nonfiction book that you've read? Like, what's one that stuck with you?
Yeah, I think it was Michelle Obama's book.
Hmm.
It was so empowering, and she came across so incredibly authentic, and it was just amazing to hear this real woman who started from very uh, simple roots, who just was incredibly bright and just continued to follow her passions, right? Like,
Hmm.
it was fantastic.
I have not read her book. Is it one that any woman would enjoy no matter what your
Yeah.
political party?
Absolutely. And I
Okay,
think
good.
what came through for me, she was so real about having these big things that she was chasing, but also she was a mother. And a lot of people just don't talk about that balance. Like, I'm always talking about things that I have to say no to because I'm a mom. Like, no, I cannot do that. I can't go to that networking event at 5 p.m. because that's dinner time. Like, and she was very real about that. And that spoke to me a lot. Right.
Hmm. Oh, I'm intrigued. I'm going to check it out.
Mhm.
Um, I love random acts of kindness. So what's a small random act of kindness that's you could do this week for a complete stranger?
A complete stranger. Mm, that's a hard one for me because I'm very shy. So I do acts of kindness for like randomly for people maybe I just met,
Okay, that counts.
right?
What would be
So let's
something
say
like
I
that?
met someone just one time, and then like a week later I just like send them through email a $10 Starbucks card and just say like, I enjoyed us meeting and I hope that this can help you this week. Like,
Wow,
I
that's
do
super nice.
that sometimes, you know. Um, but yeah, I am very shy. Like, I'm an extreme introvert. So doing stuff
I'm
for random
shocked.
people gives me heart palpitations.
Yes. There, I think
My
even
partner is so good at that. She can approach random people and have these beautiful conversations, and I'm like left with my hand on my heart, like I'm appalled that that whole interaction just happened. You know.
I think even a random act of kindness for us in the business that we're in is like seeing somebody that's got a car with a handicap sticker or a is parking in those spots or has their license plate and like leaving our information for them. Like that's could
Yeah.
be considered a random, like who knows if that's what they needed that day is sticking it on their windshield. So maybe that's a one thing we could both try. Um, all right. What's this well, we're too early in the day to ask that one. Okay, how do you cope with a difficult day?
A difficult day. I think brain breaks work best for me. So sometimes I just need to go somewhere where I know I can process and just kind of like just switch off. And I'm not good at diversifying my day. That's been something I've been working on a lot. So I'm a hyper focused person. So I just get into it. I really chase after that flow. and then I'm like, I'm in it, and I'll just dugga, 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 like the cat, no, 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 just
So if
like
you're
going.
writing, you're writing. Like
Yes,
I want to organize my day like that. I would love to have like a podcast day, a blogging day, a reaching out for speaking event day. Like in my head, that would be the ideal week, but that is not how the week
sure.
happens.
Well, and
Yeah.
I do a lot of block scheduling. So like for 90 minutes, I'm writing and I won't let anything interrupt me. Or for 90 minutes now, I'm answering emails, right? And that's my primary
So
task.
good.
But I'll spend a whole day working, right? Like, and then I didn't just like stand up and do something else.
Mm.
Like now, go check on the kids or go do some laundry or just go make dinner. And I'm very bad at like not walking away and saying like, now I do something different. And so I can get bogged down because I'm like, must do thing. I'm very robotic like that. And so for me, I think in a tough day, diversifying my actions helps me a lot. And I'm trying to be better at that.
Yeah, it does take intention. I know with the pandemic and working from home more, I
Yeah.
really have to push myself to, but I know for me, like one source of, again, the energizing is to take to get outside for 15 minutes. And I've got these dogs that need love and
Hmm.
attention too. So that helps me. But there are times where I don't want to stop and interrupt and do it, but I always feel better when
Yeah, of
I've gotten
course.
back from that. Okay, one more question.
Okay.
Okay, I love this question. What is something you do that makes you feel confident or invincible?
Probably working out. So I have
What do you
two
like to
major
do?
forms of working out. One is strength training. You can't tell by what you're
Listen,
seeing
I
from
just
me
worked
right
out today
now.
too. Like I should be a supermodel. I work out
I
five,
am
6 days a week.
a lot of people when they meet me, they call me an Amazon because I'm very big. I have a large frame. I'm very tall, and
How
so
tall are you?
I'm 5'9", and I'm just like everything about me is
Oh, you
bigger
would.
than other
I'm five
people.
two. I'm so fun size next to you. Yes.
But I am very naturally strong. And so ever since I was a teenager, I have really enjoyed lifting weights and pushing my boundaries there. And then I started running about 6 years ago, and it took a hit during COVID and not being able to leave the house because the kids were home all the time. Like I don't have my little moments, and I'm getting back into that now, and it feels really good to go running again. So the cardio and the strength, but every time I work out, I'm like, yeah, like I feel like Wonder Woman. It feels good.
It does feel good. I don't like I had years ago I kind of gave up the working out for ch- changing this body. I'm
Mhm.
50 years old. What you see is what you get. This is who I am. And just being a pro body, but I have to work out for my mental sanity. Like if you
Sure.
don't want to know me, like 2 days, if I haven't worked out in 2 days, you're like, she's off, that she's really off. And so that is part of the key for happy, and it doesn't have to be intense. It can
No,
be,
it doesn't have to be.
but it
I do
consistent.
it intensely, but yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh, so cool. Well, we could chat all day, but is there anything else that you feel like, oh, we can't end this podcast without sharing this or parting words of wisdom for a caregiver? And then how would you like folks to stay in touch with you?
Well, I just want to emphasize something. This month in our blog with Elder Care Solutions have been talking about like pressing reset on your caregiving. So like if you've gotten into a rut or you
Mm,
really need to just like refresh because it's spring. And one of the things that we talked about to do that, like a technique, is to journal. So I really want to emphasize the use of that pen to paper writing stuff down and the using of your journal, right? Like you have these beautiful prompts where that realism, I think we romanticize things. And so sometimes we think of journaling as like, I'm gonna cozy up in a nook and
yeah.
I'm gonna have hot tea and the steam's gonna be coming up and my fountain pen and my beautiful leather bound journal, and I'm gonna have hours to just pour my heart out. And of course that's not what it looks like. And so
No.
the way that you broke it up into consumable, like sit down, here's a prompt, write it out, put it away, do your thing, I think is great. And I've given your journal away, and I kind of like buy a couple more and give them away. So
Oh, thank you. You have one yourself?
I have multiple copies. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm so glad. I
Yeah.
was going to send you one if you didn't
Oh, thank you.
already have one. But
Yeah,
I'm
but
so,
like use a tool, and yours is a great one that's out there amongst tools. Like this is
Oh,
a great
thank you.
thing
I'll
to
pay
do.
you later,
Yeah.
by the
You
way.
don't have to.
Yeah. No,
You get a $10 Starbucks card. I'm just kidding.
yes, I know. And it's funny is I had someone ask me recently for if I had a digital version of it, and I'm like, who would want a digital version of it? But
Well,
people
maybe
want
that's
people want it.
yeah.
So I
We
actually
all
created one, and it's been selling real like surprisingly well. And I think it's a great option for someone to just give a quick gift to somebody, or if you're overseas and the shipping is crazy, I'm not going to
that's
ship
a
it
good idea.
outside
Yeah.
of the US. And so if somebody's listening that way, it's a great way to still get the prompts and buy your own cute journal
Sure.
and do it that way. So anyway, thank
Yeah.
you for bringing that. Journaling has been so healing for me and my
Yeah.
caregiving experience, and I do want to make it doable. And I feel like it's a small way to be intentional about
Yeah.
our self-care.
I think on social media, I put out a video that I created about journaling today and talk about like psychologically why it works.
I'll
It's
link
a,
to it.
it's very much a storytelling technique. So even though you're not like blah, 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 telling the story, which is also very good, like that needs to happen sometimes, but getting that story out of your brain, through your body and onto paper has significant beneficial aspects to our mental health. And so definitely take it up. Just don't romanticize it. Like
Yeah.
be real with what journaling looks like.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Great. That's so good. And how do folks stay in touch with you, Kimberly?
Hopefully, I've made it as easy as possible. I'm on all the socials. Don't check TikTok that often. I'm mostly using it to embarrass my children, but I'm there. I'm just getting the hang of it. But I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter as Elder Care Solutions. You also can check out our website, eldercaresolutionsinc.com. And if you just want to have a free consultation with me and get an overview of like, here's my situation, what do you think, and I'll give you some advice. We don't have to get into a formal client relationship, but you'll know even more deeply what I do at that point if we do that.
That's so good. Thank you for offering this. I would one question about it is, can anyone call you from any geography? Like, do they have
We
to?
have clients all over the US.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Perfect. Awesome. Well, y'all check it out, especially can't beat free consultation. There's nothing you can beat besides free with your time. So thank you, Kimberly, for offering this service to caregivers and for the financial care, self-care solutions that you provide. And we are grateful as a community to
um,
have you
Thanks
in
for
this
your
space.
platform as well. It takes us all.
Takes a village. Thanks again.
Bye. Thank you.